Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 7, Episode 8, The Siege of AR-558. This episode aired November 18th, 1998. Before we talk about this one, anything to say about last week's episode, Once More Into the Breach?
Yes. We both sat and watched the opening scene where I said you couldn't see Morn. And Kim pointed out it's a camera angle thing, and you can see Morn's legs in, I think, one or two shots, but you don't actually see his body or his head. So I will take the loss on that and say I was incorrect.
Wow.
You can see Morn.
That might be the first time since season 1 that we actually said, oh, maybe there was something wrong in that episode. You know what? We just don't have time to look backwards.
I think we may have spent an excessive amount of time looking at that scene going, where's Morn?
Yes, we did. Yeah. Well, then, should we get started on this one? I mean, tough to top last week's episode.
Yes.
And then it doesn't help that we start with Vic Fontaine.
Well, I have the notes, so let's get started.
Yep.
We open in the holodeck on a musical number with Rom singing, "That's Why the Lady is a Scamp," and he's singing it to Vic. We very quickly discover that singing is not one of Rom's skills.
No.
In fact, he's kind of terrible. And Vic even tells him he can't get the lyrics for the song right. Rom is very disappointed that his hopes for musical stardom have been dashed.
Well, he's a little flat, but he is enthusiastic.
He's very enthusiastic, I will say that. Julian joins them on the holodeck as Vic has recorded some songs that Julian is going to take to the troops on the front line. Vic uses the phrase pally, I think, like 100 times just in this one scene alone.
3 times. I don't know what they're trying to do with this guy, but it's not working for you and me.
It's safe to say this didn't work back in the day either. We next go to Odo meeting with Sisko, who's bringing him the new security protocols, which I'm pretty sure just made Odo's day. He loves process and formality. Sisko is actually standing reading the casualty list, and he's in a philosophical mood, telling Odo it seems all he does now is look through casualty reports, stare at the names of the dead. He used to look at every name, but now they just blur together.
Terrible.
Kira interrupts to report the Defiant is now ready to leave, and we see it flying through space. Quark is on board and complaining to Ezri that life is unfair because the Grand Nagus has assigned Quark to a fact-finding mission to the front lines. I'm pretty sure this is another example of Zek torturing Quark.
Maybe.
Or it could be Moogie, because we know Rom is the favorite child, so... I would wonder whether Moogie and Zek don't trust anyone. They may be getting these reports, but they don't ultimately trust the Federation or where they're getting the information from. And they can trust Quark that he will actually give the real information.
Well, like fake news?
Well, I think more propaganda, less fake news, more just talking up the positives. That the Federation would not necessarily say, oh yes, we've been pushed back on...
Oh, I see.
13 different fronts, but they would report, hey, we gained 300 meters on this planet.
Or it might be the opposite. They might think that it's too grim and they're not getting reality.
Yeah.
They have to believe, though, that what they're going to get from Quark is Quark. I mean, he has his own distorted view, but I guess his distorted view is more in line with how the Ferengi see things, so it probably makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think there is some of that in this episode, of the Ferengi perspective on things. Also, in this scene, is Quark wearing a phaser in his belt?
It looks like it. It looks like it has sort of a fancy pistol-like handle, which I feel like we saw that once before, way, way back in, I don't know, season 1 or 2.
Yeah, the pistol he had when he was a cook on a Ferengi ship.
Yeah.
Well, the Defiant comes under attack, and we see the ship rocking, and Quark ends up on the bridge with Worf.
Why?
And Worf explains that this sector isn't as safe as Quark thought. On the bridge, we see the Defiant plastering a Jem'Hadar ship. Yay for the good guys.
Yeah.
Quark is completely out of place here. He tries saying hi to Nog, who brushes him off with a, "I'm working," and then Sisko chases him off the bridge after he asks if anyone wants to join him in the mess hall for Arachne Gino.
Yeah, what is he even doing there? He's actually worse than Bashir.
Yes. Oh, good one. I'm going to say something surprising here.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of actually feel for Quark in this position. I think he's absolutely terrified by all of this. The Ferengi aren't brave. Quark definitely isn't.
Right.
And everything in this situation is out of his control. The few times where he's been brave or at least done the honorable thing, like when they rescued his mother, it's been on his terms.
Yeah.
And he was relying on himself and other Ferengi. Being in this situation, I can kind of feel for him that he would be absolutely terrified.
Yeah, he's definitely a fish out of water.
Yeah.
I feel a lot of times on this show, like, we have the particular people in a scene that they don't necessarily make sense there, but we have them there because we want to make a point.
Yeah.
Maybe not just a scene, but in the whole episode. And I think that about Quark here. Like,
really?
It's like we had to sort of force him in to get the point across of whatever point it is that he was going to make.
Oh.
But I agree with you. He's a definite fish out of water. There's no reason for him to be comfortable here. And so he's certainly going to be this person. He's going to be awkward. He's going to say the wrong thing. He's
not going to know the process or the protocol.
Yeah, I agree with all those things. I just don't think he belongs here, especially on this ship that has no creature comforts at all.
Yeah.
He's just got like a tiny little bunk bed somewhere, and there's no safe place to go.
We'll come on to this later, but I think he does have a point in this episode.
Oh, interesting, because I do not.
Well, you may be a little anti-Quark.
That's why we do the podcast. I did like in the scene when Quark says, I should probably write this down. It's like, yeah, you should. That is why you're here. Literally, you're supposed to be paying attention.
Right.
When Quark is on the bridge, I feel bad for Nog. I mean, Nog shouldn't feel responsible for Quark. It's not his fault that he's there. But I get it. He's also his uncle, and he's the only other Ferengi. But what to me was sort of interesting here is that now Nog is embarrassed by Quark, which is an interesting turn of the tables, where I think in the past we've seen Quark be embarrassed by Rom and his kid, right? And so now it's reversed, and Nog is clearly embarrassed by his uncle. It's sort of like we've all been in those situations, maybe when we're in school and our parents come to visit, and we're just embarrassed to have parents.
That's a good take, that Quark's embarrassed by Nog in front of Ferengi, and Nog is embarrassed by Quark in front of the Starfleet.
Yeah, certainly in front of Sisko.
Yeah.
Because Nog so desperately wants Sisko to take him seriously and to see him as being a successful member of Starfleet. There's also something later where Nog is like, he's just trying to watch how people in Starfleet behave because he wants to be respected by them and he wants to be a part of it. But Quark's presence is making that so much more difficult for him now.
Well, Nog has this whole side of the character, and I think they portrayed this through Nog pretty consistently, of this hero worship side to him. When they started developing this character, he latches onto these people and has this hero worship of them.
Yeah.
And the number one person for that is Sisko.
Definitely.
The Defiant now arrives at AR-558, and Sisko, with a team of Nog, Ezri, Julian, and the very reluctant Quark, beam down, leaving Worf on the Defiant. On the surface, they immediately come under fire and duck for cover, and into the opening credits.
In that opening scene, when Sisko is talking about how terrible the war is and looking at the list of casualties again, which is something that clearly impacts him, I started to think it feels like the character is in a different show, or the actor maybe is in a completely different show sometimes, because he's the one who is always taking the situation seriously, but we still have other characters involved in the goofy shenanigans of Star Trek.
Yeah.
And not always focused on it. But I feel like every time we see Sisko, he's just so sincere and so serious about, which you should be, because it's terrible what's going on.
Well, and he's responsible for a large part of the war effort.
That's true.
Now, before we move on, do we want to talk about beaming down into a combat zone and leaving your two most experienced officers on the ship?
Yeah. That's weird, right?
And perhaps equally as important, leaving Kira on the station.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. There were many times in this episode where I was wondering the same thing. Like, at first I was like, why on earth would you take Ezri? But then it was like later I thought, okay, maybe because they weren't sure what state all of the troops were going to be in down there, and they might need somebody to help counsel them, although she's still kind of mixed up. But okay, maybe that made sense. I think you don't take Quark. And you take your least experienced person down there. I don't get it. I don't understand at all why you're not taking somebody with more experience. Like, if you can't take Worf because you need Worf to captain the Defiant, then why aren't you taking Miles?
Why aren't you taking Kira to captain the Defiant?
Well, Kira's, yeah. I always wonder why the heck we don't have Kira. That never makes any sense to me. Sometimes they leave her behind and sometimes they don't. Why, when you're going into an actual combat situation, would you not take Kira?
Out of all of them, who's had the most brutal ground combat experience? Oh, Kira. We'll leave her on the station.
Maybe they were thinking about, was it in season 1 in the episode, oh boy, was it Battle Lines?
Yeah.
Where Sisko just couldn't control her. Remember that?
Yes, the Moon of Idiots.
On the Moon of Idiots, exactly. She couldn't stay out of it, Maybe he's like, oh, this is going to be like that. But no, I don't think so. This is, first of all, it's so different. It's so much far. We've moved a long ways from there. But also, this is a combat situation that Starfleet is involved in.
Right.
So,
I think you'd want all your expertise in this situation.
You got to leave somebody, though, who knows how to deal with combat on the station.
Yeah.
So you got to leave somebody there.
That's true. That's true.
And you don't have Dax anymore. Exactly.
Jadzia. I will accept the Kira on the station. Sisko's choice of who to take on the landing team, that was my first eye roll of this episode.
Oh, you have an eye roll count?
Yes.
Uh-oh. Usually that's for me, but this would be good. All right, there's one.
Well, Sisko figures out the fire is coming from Federation phasers, and we hear a call for ceasefire, damn it. So there's going to be a lot of overanalysis in this episode, I'm afraid.
Okay.
So this was a friendly fire incident. Perhaps maybe they could have used code words before they started firing when they landed. Like they had 300 years earlier. Or maybe like clickers, like on D-Day. That's listener homework. If they want to know what that is, look up D-Day clickers. Just some way, if you're not sure who's there, having code words that you pre-shared where you're landing.
Yeah, but if they did that, it would destroy the reason for the firing, which was these people are on edge. They've lost their commanders, right? There's now a lieutenant in charge. We haven't heard that quite yet. But I think that if they were doing those things, we wouldn't be in this situation.
But they should still be able to follow basic procedure.
Oh, I agree.
Almost an eye roll, but it isn't. But anyway.
Okay.
In the Federation camp, we see that some of the soldiers are a little twitchy and fire at anything they think is Jem'Hadar.
Yeah.
And we meet Nadia Larkin, who's the lieutenant in command because all the other officers have been killed. She apologizes, saying, there was a breakdown in communication. There's no communication.
Yeah. Well, that's a breakdown.
We also meet Vargas, who seems to be suffering from combat fatigue. They were supposed to have been rotated out after 90 days, but have been stuck here for 5 months. And there seems to also be a breakdown in discipline, too.
This scene had a real Aliens feel.
Yes. I know what you mean. Vargas was kind of like Hudson. Game over, man.
I don't remember any of their names, but yes.
We now go underground to find out what all the fuss is about, and it's the biggest Dominion communications array in the sector, which Starfleet has captured. If they can figure out how it works, they can tap into the entire Dominion comms system. Larkin explains how they've spent 5 months fighting off the Jem'Hadar attacks, and they've dropped from the original 150 who landed to now only 43.
I mean, it seems like if this thing is so important, you would send a few more people here.
Yeah.
No.
Sisko explains how their forces are a little thin and they may be stuck here for a while. And this leads into the second massive eye roll.
Oh, okay.
None of this makes sense. You have a comms relay that literally could blow open all the secure communications for your enemy. And you're not assigning every resource you can to secure this thing and figure out how it works.
Yeah. No, you've got one guy there.
Yeah. This would be like the Allies in World War II getting hold of an Enigma code machine and saying, oh, that's nice. Get Fred to look at it when he's not busy. This is literally the type of technology that is a war winner. This is why it earns the second massive eye roll.
Well, I feel like we talked about this, but how rusty would the admirals be being involved in a war? I mean,
yeah,
they may be just not thinking.
Can they not read history?
Well, maybe not.
Did all the war colleges close?
Well, because there's been peace for a long time. On Earth, anyway. I mean, the other members of the Federation surely have been involved in conflicts before.
Yes.
And you've also got the Romulans involved. I mean, have some conversations about how you should be handling these situations.
Right.
I don't know.
That so didn't make sense for me.
Wouldn't it be strange, though, if they were all really great at war and, they suddenly had all these great strategies of how to deal with it? I almost feel like that would be out of place, too.
That's true. But I think a level of
common sense
would come into play here, or just not incompetence.
Yeah.
You can read history.
Yeah.
And this is what I feel is almost sort of missing.
All right.
Esri immediately bonds with the engineering guy who's working on the relay and starts helping him using her knowledge from the previous host, Tobin. And I had to look up this guy's name. It's Kellen, which I don't think we learned till the very end. But
yeah,
just engineering guy. So she's making a friend.
But you know who that guy is, right?
No.
Okay, I'm going to bring it up later.
And also, she seems to be using her knowledge to actually really be practically helpful.
Yep.
Outside, Quark is talking to Nog. And Quark does seem to be pretty uncomfortable here. Nog is pointing out a guy that I will be calling Sergeant Badass for the rest of this episode. Anyway, this guy is wearing 8 tubes of Ketracel White around his neck, taken from the Jem'Hadar he's killed. Nog is very impressed by this, and Quark not so much.
I think that might have been one of my eye rolls. There's a little bit of a cliche.
Yes, that is definitely on the cliche count. Quark tells Nog to look around. This isn't the Starfleet you know. But Nog is very impressed with the resilience of these troops and how they've held out for so long, describing them as heroes. Quark goes on to tell Nog about how humans are kind and friendly, but when pushed, can revert to being as nasty and as violent as the most bloodthirsty Klingons. How would Quark honestly actually know this?
Well, he's probably assuming it. Yeah, I'm not sure where Quark has seen it.
Yeah.
I know that we have talked about this on this podcast way back in season 1 or 2, about how if you take away the basics from humans, are they really going to continue to be so evolved?
Right.
Or are they going to go backwards?
I think Julian was the one who brought that up the first time on the show.
Clearly the answer is no, or at least that's what they want us to think, yeah.
Right. Quark then tells him to just look at the faces of the troops. Nog looks around and replies, I feel sorry for the Jem'Hadar. God, this writing. This is eye roll number 3. And I'm thinking as well, we should probably keep a cliche counter. I
guess I didn't feel quite the same about this scene. I quite liked Nog in this scene, and I think it makes sense that he's still the one holding on to all of his ideals at this point. I mean, maybe not after what happens to him later in the episode, but I think up until now, he has put the members of Starfleet up on a pedestal, and he is striving to be like them. So why wouldn't he think that way? Why wouldn't he feel this way, in this particular moment?
I would agree. I think he does genuinely look at them as heroes. They have followed their orders. They've been fighting this battle for months. They haven't wavered. From Nog's perspective, yes, these people, they might be brutalized soldiers who are truly combat hardened in the worst sense. But to him, they are heroes.
So what is your eye roll specifically in this scene?
Just that line of, I feel sorry for the Jem'Hadar. I feel that is just the ultimate cliche. And why would he feel sorry for the Jem'Hadar?
He doesn't feel sorry for the Jem'Hadar. He's just making a point that these are the tough guys. These are the ones who are going to win. He's not saying he feels sorry for them. To me, that's a total misread of what he's saying.
I just feel that in the writing, this is just a classic cliche to put in here. I think that's as much as anything. I think it really doesn't work for me.
Okay. I'm not sure I agree with you. I don't think he feels sorry for the Jem'Hadar at all.
Yeah.
I just think he's trying to make a point to Quark that these are the heroes, these are the tough guys, the Jem'Hadar don't stand a chance. It's not that he really feels bad for them.
That would be a better way to write it. That's not how it's written.
But, no, I completely disagree.
Yeah.
I think it is written that way. The way that he is saying it, and Quark is in... Look, first of all, Quark is a complete distraction in the scene and super irritating, and I would have smacked him 1,000 times. But Quark is in his ear yammering about how, look at these people, they're just terrible, blah, blah, blah. Nog is holding on to his theory that, no, these are the good guys, these are the heroes.
Yeah.
And when he says, I feel sorry for the Jem'Hadar, it's like a classic line where he's just saying, because these guys are going to win. Not because he he somehow feels bad for them. I don't know. I feel like you're misreading what he's saying.
And I think you're misreading what he's saying. This comes back to I think it's just a really bad cliched way of doing it.
I don't know that I would have written that line any differently.
Really?
He is in no way saying he feels sorry for the Jem'Hadar.
Yeah. Maybe the problem is because I think this is a cheap line from bad propaganda movies.
Okay. I don't know how to combat what you're saying. I'm not sure if it's because my brain isn't working, but I just felt like he was saying he doesn't really feel bad for him. He's just saying they're going to lose.
Yeah.
That's all.
That's a better way of saying it. Because they're going to lose. Maybe it comes down to this. When you're surrounded by these people who spent 5 months fighting the Jem'Hadar, I think it would be the equivalent of saying to Worf, like Nog did earlier, oh, it's nice to be away from the front lines.
That was different because he really meant that.
Well,
he really meant, I don't want to be on the front lines.
I think that people could take that the wrong way as well. What do you mean you're feeling bad for the Jem'Hadar? I just think this is a really bad line to use around those people.
Well, he's using it only to Quark. They can't hear him.
I don't know. Sergeant Badass, I think, would probably hear it.
Even if you said that to Sergeant Badass, I bet he knows what you mean. Which is, yeah, because I'm going to kill them.
Yeah, don't say it to Vargas.
Or Vasquez. Oh, wrong show. The only name I do remember from Aliens.
Oh, if we want to go down the Vasquez route, I'll bring that up later.
I just...
I think we're reading this completely different.
I just contest your eye roll on this scene.
Okay.
I think this is what Nog would say. Or maybe not just Nog, but I think this is what someone might say.
Sorry, could you say that again?
Oh, Siri, you are really not helping me. You can leave Siri in. She's fine.
You've stated your position very well, but I will retain my eye roll.
All right. You are loud. I just contest it. As the scene ends here between Quark and Nog, one of the things that I really took note of was the music. The music that they play here is so not Star Trek music. It was weird.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't know, just sad music.
Yeah.
It gave the whole show a different feel. Like I didn't recognize the show that I was watching.
Yes.
Because of the music.
Moving on. In the caves, Bashir is holding a clinic and helping Vargas with the various ailments, which is a long list of them, and he freaks out when Bashir touches his bandage on his arm. He's very clearly showing signs of extreme stress. He tells Bashir a story about how a guy called McGreevy put the bandage on him, a guy Vargas hated because he talked too much. But when he was bandaging his arm, he was killed right in front of him.
Ugh.
And Vargas says he just sat and looked at him because for the first time he was just quiet. And Vargas then breaks down crying. So we clearly see they are all on edge here.
Yeah.
I think this was actually quite well done because I think Vargas is basically a stand-in for the state of all these troops that are here, except for Sergeant Badass.
Yeah, they're definitely putting a lot of the drama into this guy because they don't have a lot of time.
Right.
And so they're showing maybe all the cracks by just putting all the cracks onto this character.
Right.
He's pretty good, actually.
He seems very damaged.
Mm-hmm. I was worried you were going to roll your eyes at him, too.
No, because I get the point of this character. We can't show, in the time limit we have, a large number, half a dozen members of the squad all suffering from the same thing. So we've got to show everything with just one guy. So I get that his role from a writing and a production standpoint.
Okay.
Bashir now is telling Sisko about the dreadful condition of these troops, and they need to be rotated out. But Sisko tells him there's nothing he can do about it. And at that moment, there's an explosion, and we learn of the Houdini anti-personnel mines. They hide in subspace and then drop out and blow somebody up.
This is the worst thing I have ever heard.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, landmines are bad enough.
Yep.
But these are different. You actually could sweep a particular place for a landmine and not blow up, and then come back and step in the exact same place later and be blown up. That's what these things are.
Right.
Landmines are awful. These are like 100 times worse.
Yes.
The war part of it is not what I come to Star Trek for.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't have considered this as part of my Star Trek. I don't like this in my Star Trek.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just found those mines super upsetting.
Well, they are. They're kind of horrific. I mean, landmines and anti-personnel mines are pretty nasty things in the real world.
Yeah.
Add to that Star Trek technology, and you're on a next level of nasty.
Well, realistically, the weapons would be so much worse.
Yes.
And so much harder to detect, so much more complicated.
Yeah.
You know, they would have AI. It would be so different from what we're seeing in this Dominion War, but what we are seeing is bad enough.
Yeah.
Before this, the worst thing I had seen was the quickening.
Yeah.
With the Dominion basically poisoning generations.
Yes.
And not caring about it. And now we have this. It's just like, oh, God.
Generational biological weapons. Pretty nasty.
Terrible.
After the explanation of the mines, Sergeant Badass says, it's not the captain's problem, he's leaving. And Worf calls, telling Sisko they're ready to beam up, and Mars reports that the Jem'Hadar are landing troops 9 kilometers away from their position. But Sisko declines, telling them, no, we're staying here. Worf objects, but Sisko gave him an order. The lieutenant asks Sisko for his orders, and he says, there is only one. We hold.
Damn, Sisko is amazing. His delivery of that line just blew me away. And I started to think about the one thing these captains, the Star Trek captains, have in common is delivery of a dramatic line like that. You know, you think about Picard in First Contact saying the line must be drawn here.
Oh.
I mean, there are many other examples too, and they could all do it. And this is like Sisko's line.
I would agree with Avery's performance here.
This episode is dark.
The defenders are now preparing for a Jem'Hadar attack. Sisko is using Nog's extremely sensitive hearing to locate the Jem'Hadar because they're jamming all their sensors. Nog is right next to Sergeant Badass, and he's sharpening some kind of knife. There's some more hero worship from Nog here. Nog wants to see it, but Badass tells him to concentrate on his work.
It's another cliche.
Yeah.
I'll give you that one. Yeah, that guy, that particular badass character, I don't know what his name is either, so Sergeant Badass is good enough for me. But that character, in many ways, is the cliche in this episode.
200%. The Jem'Hadar begin their attack, and they're getting slaughtered. But quickly they realize these are only holograms, and they all disappear.
Took us a long time to figure that out, didn't it?
Yeah. So, if Nog can hear all these things, then surely he could hear the heartbeat of the Jem'Hadar, or their
surely
breathing.
He could hear that they're making no sound.
Yeah, did he forget to tune his ears to that frequency?
Maybe he panicked a little bit. He doesn't have a lot of experience in this situation.
True.
But we could have said that.
Also, if they're in a life and death situation here, couldn't they use Quark for intel too? He's very good at listening. Keep him out of the line of fire, but have him listening for things?
Yeah.
You're wasting a resource here.
If their hearing is that good, he doesn't need to be right at the front.
Yeah. And also, Quark's very good at keeping himself alive, so he would be useful.
He'd be busy talking and screaming and, I don't know.
Hiding.
It's probably the right choice to keep him away.
Well, Sisko warns all the others that this was just a ruse, and next time they won't be sending holograms. If you notice here, Sisko is standing up right in the middle of the compound, with Jem'Hadar around, and also we know the Jem'Hadar have excellent eyesight.
And they also can cloak themselves.
Yep. Fortunately, the Dominion haven't invented snipers.
The problem is this is not a war show. It just isn't. It's something else, and we're trying to be, but yeah.
This is eye roll number 4 for me.
All right.
But before we leave the scene, there's an explosion, and another Houdini mine takes out one of the troops. In the comms array, Sisko is ordering Ezri and the engineer to start looking for a way to find the mines. Ezri describes it as a particularly nasty piece of engineering.
And Kellen says, I'm an engineer, not a magician.
Damn it, Jim.
It's not a great one, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. This is the point that I had to look up who is playing Kellen, the engineer.
Yeah.
And do you know who it is?
No.
It's Will Robinson.
Oh, danger, danger.
Danger, danger. This is Will Robinson.
Oh, I did not figure that out.
He just had this supremely innocent face.
Yeah.
And I just thought, man, I've seen that face before.
Outside, Quark goes again to talk to Nog and brings him food. Nog has to remind Quark that he's a Starfleet officer and has his duties to perform. Quark at one point even tells Nog he should start acting more like a Ferengi, to which he replies, you mean hiding under a rock every time trouble starts? Quark continues, saying that if the Federation had listened to the Ferengi Alliance, there wouldn't have been a war. They'd have negotiated an accommodation and hammered out a peace treaty. Nog mockingly replies, you make it sound so easy. And Quark quotes Rule of Acquisition 125, you can't make a deal if you're dead. I actually like this scene. I think, in my opinion, is probably the best part of the episode, because it displays the complete gulf between Nog and Quark's value sets. It's a really good conversation. It just demonstrates that Quark and Nog just don't think the same way.
Right.
It's almost like they don't even have a common point of reference. Like when
Not
Quark
anymore.
says to him, start acting like a Ferengi. I thought it really worked.
Yeah. He also makes some comment about Nog's soul. Like he even really knows what that means. I think Nog has found his soul.
Yeah.
Quark still runs from his. I can see why you thought it was a good scene. I just find Quark so annoying here because I recognize that Nog has decided what his destiny is and what he wants to do with his life.
Right.
And here is his annoying uncle trying to stop him. And it's that would really be irritating to me if the same thing were happening to me, like at my place of work or whatever.
Yeah.
But I get your point.
Well, I think Quark is the stand-in here for the entire Ferengi race of why you're rejecting our traditional values.
Yeah.
He speaks for all Ferengi, except Rom, I guess.
Remember back when Jake came along on a mission and I was just like, why all of a sudden do we have reporters on missions? It's just not something we've done before. This is similar. It's like, what the heck? Why do we have Quark here? Why would we allow it into such a dangerous mission? Because he's interfering.
I'm going to disagree with you for the second time in this episode. Quark is on a diplomatic mission. I believe he probably would have been given diplomatic credentials by the Nagus if he's going on the behalf of the Ferengi Alliance. So I would see the reason why he's on there is because this is diplomatic politics.
If he was actually a diplomat.
I think maybe he's been given temporary diplomatic credentials to do this.
Oh, okay, but you're talking about credentials. I'm talking about skills. He's not a diplomat. He's a dumbass.
Well, from what we've seen a lot of the Ferengi, I think he probably has the same level of skills as any Ferengi in diplomacy.
And I just feel bad for Nog. Because I think about what if a family member came to my job and just kept saying, well, this is stupid. Why would you do this?
Yeah.
It's like, get out of here. This is what I have chosen to do.
Well, I think that's the reason for the writing here, is to have Quark as the voice of all Ferengi of like, why are you joining Starfleet? That's not a Ferengi thing. But I can understand it, your point there. Yeah, that would be supremely annoying.
Yeah. I also don't think Quark would be wandering around now that he knows about the mines.
Oh.
I think he would not move.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, he'd be in one place, not moving.
He'd be hiding, right.
Mm-hmm. I don't mean that as an insult. I would be doing the same thing.
Sisko interrupts this conversation to send Nog, Larkin, and Sergeant Badass, who we learn at this point his name is Reese, out on a scouting mission. He's sending Nog because without tricorders, they can rely on Nog's hearing.
Are we not going to talk about the hissy fit that Quark was throwing here? As Sisko, knock him out or lock him up. I don't know. He's interfering with the mission now because he's being a big baby.
Yeah.
And he's saying, why don't you send someone else? Why would you send Nog? Well, because Nog is the only one who can hear anything. And by the way, I don't have to explain myself to you. I was surprised that Sisko put up with Quark as much as he did in this episode. Yes, eventually he gets mad, but I can't believe he just let this go here.
I think maybe because, again, it's the politics. It's Quark is acting as a diplomat for the Ferengi Alliance, as annoying as he is.
And he is annoying.
Yeah. Back in the comms relay, Ezri has managed to get a tricorder working. She says it could have been Tobin or Jadzia.
Jadzia.
Either way, that's a pretty useful skill.
Mm-hmm.
There's some technobabble about how to find the mines, and Ezri talks about how this is her first real combat experience. But Tarius, Curzon, and Jadzia were all in battle many times, and she can remember exactly what that felt like.
Didn't you think these two should stop chatting and get to work?
Yeah.
There was a lot of socializing going on.
Yeah.
But you kind of needed it. You needed to lighten up the episode a little bit.
Well, you needed to show that bond as well, that a little bit of kindred spirit here.
Yes.
Kellen says that having someone else's memories of being in combat is one thing, but living through it yourself is another.
Yeah.
Into eye roll number 5.
Uh-oh.
How would he know or have any frame of reference what it's like for joined Trills, to have experiences like this and knowledge like that?
Well, they're just having a conversation about it. I feel like I might say something like that. Like, wow, that seems weird.
Yeah, but he specifically says having memories of it and being in it are different things.
Well, they are.
Here's why it's eye roll number 5. We just had 2 examples in this episode alone of Ezri directly using past memories to help with the recalibration of whatever it was and fix the tricorder, using those memories of hosts. She has battle experience from previous hosts, possibly dozens or hundreds of battles, we don't know. You can either use those memories all the time or not at all. She should be able to outperform the combat veterans if she has this level of experience. I mean, maybe not personally as Ezri, but if she can tap on those memories, she would be absolutely formidable. So it contradicts itself in the same episode.
Yeah, I see your point. Okay, I'll accept that one.
Thank you. I think it all comes from, I just really like the way with Ezri they're using the trill here, of the way she's able to use it like almost like it's a database of stuff that I've done and techniques I can call on. I really do like that. Nog, out on patrol, have located the Jem'Hadar encampment, and they're counting the numbers and doing the recon. As they're leaving, the patrol comes under fire and Larkin is shot in the back. Nog takes a hit to the leg and goes down. So much for the advanced hearing then, if he couldn't hear the ambush. The other note I have here is, I guess if this is where they had advanced technology, like a portable mortar, they could have launched a surprise mortar raid and attacked the Jem'Hadar while they're in their base. You know, like infiltration units did 300 years before. Again, another piece about we're writing a war episode, and we're not doing things that previous wars have involved.
Yeah, I thought that was a little strange too, but I don't know anything about war tactics. But you only have limited resources, and just doing recon was their job. Their job wasn't to cause chaos. It was just to see what they're up against and to not put themselves at risk. I mean, in the end, they did, but not on purpose.
I think this is where better strategy would probably come in useful.
Yeah.
We cut back to the comms relay, and Sergeant Badass has made it back to the base, carrying the wounded Nog. He reports they found the Jem'Hadar, and there are 2 columns of them. Before Sisko leaves, Sergeant Badass tells him, the kid did all right.
No.
And I roll number 6 as my cliche radiation alarm goes off.
Yikes, okay.
Sisko now goes to see Nog, and Quark informs him he's going to lose his leg. Quark berates Sisko because he put Nog in danger. Sisko's had enough of this civilian whining and tells him
Finally.
He cares about every soldier under his command. At this point, he should either put Quark to use or confine him somewhere.
Yeah, I do feel like if we'd kept him busy, maybe he would have been less irritating.
That's a good point. Sisko goes to see the injured Nog, who blames himself for getting Larkin killed. Sisko reassures him he did what he needed to do. He found the camp, and he followed orders. Finally, Nog asks Sisko, the comms array, it's worth it, isn't it?
Ugh.
And Sisko replies, I hope to God it is.
Yeah.
Shouldn't that be, I hope to the prophets it is? That would be more appropriate, I think.
Well, they're not on Bajor.
Ezri calls Sisko, telling him, we're ready. And we see Ezri and Kellen using their working tricorders to force the Houdinis to drop out of subspace. And well, there are loads of them, and they are everywhere. I mean, like dozens of them. And one appears right by Vargas's head.
That scene was super scary.
Oh, yeah, I really liked it, because the way Sisko, looks around and the camera pans with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very dramatic.
And you see just loads of these things just popping out of subspace. And they're little, glowing red spheres. And there are just dozens of them. It was so creepy.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Kellen tells Sisko all we have to do now is figure out a way to disarm them. Sisko replies, we're not going to disarm them. We're going to use them. We now get some exposition where Sergeant Badass explains the terrain. Conveniently, there is only one ravine the Jem'Hadar need to pass through. Sisko says they're going to relocate the mines there. We never cover how they're actually going to move them, though.
No. The guy, Will Robinson, just says, well, that'll be easy.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why didn't we just move them into their camp?
Right. Ezri brings up how a few hours ago, they thought these were ruthless weapons that only the Dominion would use. Yep. And now they're going to use them. She's sort of being the conscience of the Federation here.
Yeah, like how I said earlier that sometimes it seems like Sisko is in a different show. This is a good example of that, where Sisko understands that war is hell.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, too, is this destroying the Starfleet in Sisko? The fact that he has to think that way, the fact that he has to be brutal. Is it destroying that in all of them, in all of these people? Are we killing all of the hope and turning them just into monsters?
That's really an open question.
I mean, what does this do to Nog?
That is covered in Nog's ongoing storyline. Sisko tells her that when the Jem'Hadar come through the barricades, the fewer there are, the better their chances of survival.
I agree.
Cut to the defenders, all crouching and waiting for the attack. Unfortunately, the defenders have forgotten about advanced technology like tripwires, claymores, or even landmines in the future.
Okay.
As they're waiting, music begins playing, and we hear Vic Fontaine singing. Bashir had started the music, and then joins the others, very efficiently prepping his phaser rifle. Vargas notices and says, "I can see you've done that before." And Bashir replies, "Too many times. Funny, I joined Starfleet to save lives." In the distance, we see flashes and we hear the mines going off, and then it gets quiet.
It didn't seem like enough explosions
No.
compared to how many mines we had.
Yeah. A few moments later, we hear battle cries as the Jem'Hadar charge into view, using the tried and trusted technique of just running directly at the enemy.
Straight power play.
Yes. Sisko orders firing, and the shooting begins. Because in the future as well, they've forgotten about squad machine guns, or any kind of machine gun, in fact, even perhaps World War I machine guns.
Okay, all right.
Eye roll number 7.
I thought the music was really weird in the scene. Again, it's just this sad, non-Star Trek-y.
Yes.
Yeah.
We go into the battle, and the dramatic music plays as Starfleet and the Jem'Hadar shoot it out, and we see casualties being taken on both sides. The Jem'Hadar make it through the defenses, forcing Sisko and Captain Badass into hand-to-hand combat. Meanwhile, tending to Nog, Quark can hear the battle raging outside. Vargas gets a knife to the back from the Jem'Hadar and goes down. Sisko continues to be a one-man Jem'Hadar killing machine. Ezri gets knocked to the ground by another Jem'Hadar, and as he's about to shoot, Killen takes him out, only to immediately get shot himself.
Oh.
Back to Quark, who suddenly turns around and shoots a Jem'Hadar who's made it all the way into the comms relay. So he did have a phaser on him.
Okay, I am going to admit something.
Yes?
I didn't see that happen.
Oh.
Oh.
You said it was someone else shot him.
I may have fast-forwarded through this.
Oh, you don't like the
Both
battle
times
scenes.
that I
Oh.
watched the episode. It's two things. I don't like violence, but also the flashing lights are terrible for me.
Oh, yeah.
So,
And there was a lot of that there.
yeah. But I didn't even know that happened.
Oh, well, this is important because it shows that everybody except Nog got some killing in.
Okay.
Finally, Sisko is knocked to the ground and passes out just as a Jem'Hadar is raising his rifle to fire on him.
I saw that.
And fade to black.
I saw that. That was actually quite good because he looked back and just saw it about to happen and then he passed out.
Yep. Sergeant Badass rouses Sisko, asking, "You still with us?" It appears Sergeant Badass has single-handedly killed all the remaining Jem'Hadar without a scratch.
That seems right.
Sad music plays as Sisko surveys the results of the battle.
Oh.
And Ezri is cradling the dead or dying Killen.
Poor Will Robinson.
Sisko stands and says, "We held." And Sergeant Badass
Yep.
replies, "Those were our orders, sir." Eye roll number 8. Seriously, this script. And eye roll number 9, just for the music.
The music was
Yeah.
weird. Awkward, weird. I didn't like it.
There's a time jump now, and we see Sisko watching more engineers working on the relay. Worf reports the USS Veracruz is beaming down relief and evacuating the wounded. Worf tells Sisko, "This was a great victory, one worthy of story and song."
Was it?
Sisko just replies, "It cost enough." And I feel Worf should have replied, "And you didn't invite me?" I also think Worf would probably have pointed out all these people, their place in Stovercore is assured. They died a warrior's death. You should be celebrating them.
He was thinking that.
On the surface, new troops have arrived, and Sergeant Badass calls them children. Sisko replies, "Not for long," and asks him, "Ready?" Sergeant Badass then throws the knife he was carrying into the ground and says, "Let's go." And the three beam away, and he's still wearing his Ketracel white necklace. Eye roll number 10.
Do you think they were trying to show here that he was leaving that way behind? Like he was going to sort of go back to being a Starfleet officer now that he was leaving that planet, and that was the point of throwing the knife in the ground?
Yes. His war was done.
I don't know how. I mean, it's probably one thing to be involved on the ground and to be part of combat, and the things that you see and the things that you have to do to survive must be horrible. But in this episode, to think about the decisions that Sisko made and how that directly impacted the death of many people and the injury to Nog, that must just be soul destroying and just not Star Trek. I mean, you're rolling your eyes at how it's not realistic enough, but if I were rolling my eyes, it would be about, is this what I want to watch? No.
Yeah. To add to your observation, I think what we were seeing at the beginning with Sisko, looking at the casualty lists and the effect that it was having on him, is exactly what you're talking about. of what it does to the commanding officers of Starfleet.
You know, we talked about this before, and I think I even said it in the trailer for season 7. I struggled when the show was first airing to think of it as Star Trek because they were on a floating gas station, and I just didn't get it.
Right.
And it just seemed like there was a lot of arguing and a lot of unhappy people, and it just didn't seem like my show. And then I have definitely gotten into it and am enjoying it, but these kind of episodes I don't like at all.
Yeah.
I would argue this is not Star Trek.
Gotcha.
Which is going to piss off somebody. Your distaste for this episode is going to annoy someone as well, but that's okay. That's your problem.
I'll live with that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Sisko is now in his office back on the station, and Kira comes in with the latest casualty report. She says, "That's a lot of names." Sisko replies, "They're not just names. It's important we remember. We have to remember." The end.
Ugh. The only note that I have in that scene is, That's
a good summary of that one.
Well, I'm glad we reached the end. Do you have over-analysis?
Yes, I do. First over-analysis point. If the Dominion ever discover or invent artillery, then the Federation is just done. That's eye roll number 11, I think.
Okay.
The next one. If the Jem'Hadar's battle strategy seems to consist of World War I simple frontal assaults, straight power plays, why did they even bother with the holograms?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
There can only be one way in. What's behind them?
Rocks.
It didn't say that.
Yeah.
Mountains.
Oh, so if the Jem'Hadar have a mountain division, they're really screwed.
But what do you need mountains for? You have transporter technology. That I didn't understand at all.
Yeah. Couldn't you beam in a little closer? Like into the camp?
Right into the camp. Because there were no shields. At least we didn't talk about shields.
Well, that leads on to the next thing. If this relay is absolutely critical and the Dominion either want it back or want to destroy it, why don't the Jem'Hadar dust off and then nuke the whole site from orbit? It's the only way to be sure. The Ellen Ripley tactic, as it's known.
Oh, here we've got some more alien. Yeah. Yeah.
There was no mention of there being a shield.
I don't know.
Over the array or over the Starfleet's positions. There's no defense from an orbital bombardment. And we know from the ship that the Jem'Hadar can launch orbital bombardments. That's what they were doing. They weren't trying to hit the ship, but they were trying to force them out, if you remember. So, again, another piece that if this is so important, why didn't they do that?
Yeah, I guess we're supposed to believe that they don't want it damaged because they know damaging it will also impact them.
Interesting.
But
if you could lose that piece of technology and have your entire comms network compromised, which is worse? You lose the technology.
Well, I don't know. I feel like I don't know enough about what it would do, and they don't explain enough about what would happen if they didn't have it.
Yeah.
I was constantly thinking, if you've got a small group of people in one isolated location on a planet, why are you not gassing them? Why are you not doing, like you were talking about shooting them from orbit or whatever. Okay, if you don't want to destroy the array, then why aren't you doing something to get rid of those people?
You mean from an adversary who has no compunction about using biological weapons?
Exactly. I'm not saying I would do it. I'm just saying, why would the Dominion not do it? Yeah.
And then I think my final point, before I go on for like 400 things wrong with this episode.
Okay.
I then think my final point is, do you remember those little remote targeting weapons that Ducat programmed into the replicator in Ops, in Civil Defense?
Oh, yeah.
That sat there and just shot anything that moved?
That wasn't Cardassian.
Yeah. How about taking a few dozen of those along and just placing them all along the route for the Jem'Hadar and defending the camp with those things? We know they work.
I really feel like this is the problem with trying to have a war in the future.
Yeah.
It's sort of like when we've watched, I don't know, was it Starship Troopers or whatever other movie we've watched that is set in the future, and you're asking the question of, why are we using the same type of weapons? Why do we have ground troops? I don't understand.
Yeah.
It's very similar here. Like, does this make sense that you are having a war on the ground and that your weapons are still the same as they would have been 300 years earlier?
Well, they're not even as good as they were 300 years ago.
Well, the tactics aren't, yeah.
There's no mortars. There's no artillery. The tactics are a frontal assault. There's no machine guns.
I think this is the problem with us trying to have a war in Star Trek.
100% agree. And that, I think, wraps up my quite short over-analysis.
I only had a couple of things, and we've sort of talked about them already. I mean, it seemed like a weird group to beam down into a dangerous place.
Yeah.
I didn't understand it. And we already talked a little bit about that. And then my next note is, this is an exceedingly gritty episode. It's dark in more ways than one. It's dark in that it was hard to see sometimes. I couldn't actually see what was going on, and then it was just dark because it was dark. And the grittier episodes, I'm pretty sure I have disliked every one of them so far because that's not the show I want to watch.
Did you like the ship?
I think I did, because that wasn't so much a war episode as it was them just trying to stay alive. Whereas this, they're actually having ground troops and a battle scene like they did in that episode with Jake and Bashir. It's not the show I'm here for. And it kind of reinforces to me any criticisms that show may have had at the time. It's like, yeah, okay, you wanted to make a war show. Maybe you should have made a show about war. Why did you try to turn Star Trek into that? Star Trek is supposed to be about hope. And we killed Will Robinson. Where's the hope? And we shot off Nog's leg. Where's the hope?
Do you think the robot's going to be upset?
Oh, I think the robot would have been very upset. So that was all I had in overanalysis. And for women in the future, I didn't have anything. There's nothing specific here to say about women. I mean, they killed off the lieutenant who was running the place, but that's not a criticism of the show. I think that the women were treated fairly in this episode, although there weren't very many of them. So let's just move on to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
It will probably come as no surprise. This is absolutely 2 thumbs down.
Interesting.
It felt too much like an overly melodramatic World War II propaganda flick. It was just loaded with cliches.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to see an episode dealing with close-up war and what it does to the people who served and the people who are actually fighting. Like the accounts I've read and listened to from like World War I veterans or World War II veterans, but this feels just so riddled with cliches. It seems they were trying to do something and missing the point because they were missing the technology. They were missing the automation of war. If you like the dehumanization or the depersonalization of it, it didn't work. And maybe it's because I feel this episode was almost like a comic book from the 40s as well.
So you feel like it diminishes it?
Yes. Yeah. I think you could have done this story so much better. And they've done it better in the past. Rocks and Shoals was excellent. The ship, it really didn't work. Did not like it. 2 thumbs down.
Wow.
Wasted opportunity.
What was that episode with Bashir and Jake?
Nor the Battle to the Strong. I didn't mention that one. That's another great one. That was really well done.
So you liked that episode, but you didn't like this episode. You felt like this one had more cliches in it and also didn't show like we'd learned anything from our own history.
Right.
I guess. Yeah. I don't know what to say about this episode. I didn't feel as strongly negative about it as you did because I'm not that interested in the details of war, but I didn't enjoy it. I would certainly say that. I even thought that the music was off and the whole thing was strange.
Oh, yeah, the music, really.
I've said this before, and this isn't what I'm here for. This isn't what I come to Star Trek for.
Yeah.
I want to see something hopeful. I want to see us better than, in the future, better than we are now. I don't want to see us worse or the same. We've talked many times about how Star Trek is so good at making a large point with a small set and a small number of people. We think about episodes like Past Tense, which there's not a lot to that, but they make such an amazing point. And they wisely go back in time to show, look how barbaric we used to be, and we're so much more evolved now. It's almost like we're combating with ourselves with these kinds of episodes. And I don't want this war to go on for the rest of the season because I'm tired of it. says a person who isn't from the Ukraine and is probably quite tired of what the war is doing to their country as well. It's not scratching the Star Trek itch. It's something else. It's a different show.
Oh, I would agree.
At least we're not insulting women, but we're still not doing Star Trek. So...
yeah, I feel it's one of those episodes where somebody was trying to do something else.
Yeah, someone had a point to make. Yeah.
Like Starship Down, it felt like someone was trying to remake a bad submarine movie. This feels like it's someone trying to remake a 1940s propaganda movie.
Yeah. I don't know. Am I on the fence or am I thumbs down? I guess I'm going to give it a thumbs down because I don't want to watch it again. I mean, there's some interesting stuff to come from it. I can see where we go with Nog now could be quite interesting, but it's so dark. I'm not sure I want to go there. And we killed Will Robinson. I mean, come on, people. So I'm not as thumbs downy as you are because of one reason.
Go.
Avery Brooks. He should have had like 75 Emmys. I mean, that guy's amazing. So maybe because of that, I'll leave it at neutral because he's so good.
I would agree. The two people I really liked in this episode were Avery and Esri.
Yeah, Esri was pretty good here too. And Nog was great. Not Quark.
Yes.
But Nog.
I might disagree there. I think the interaction between Quark and Nog served a good purpose.
We're never going to agree on that. I think we should just move on.
Yes, I think we absolutely should. The next episode is...
It's not about the war, from what I've seen, yes.
Unfortunately, Cam, you've probably seen from the thumbnail, it's a Ducat episode.
Oh, God. And I have to do the notes. Great. Well, that wraps up Season 7, Episode 8. Come back next week for Episode 9.
I might not complain as much.
In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at rebingeit@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at rebingeit. We're also on Instagram and YouTube at rebingeit. You can join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the ReBinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.